Welcome to another episode of Coffee with Closers. Today we have Tierny Jordan. She has her own real estate team, and we're going to talk about how she actually became a millionaire real estate agent. She's going to talk about the complete process, how she started from ground zero and built it all the way up to having her own team and becoming a millionaire real estate agent. So let's dive right into the video. Welcome to Coffee with Closers. In this series, we interview top real estate producers that are out there making big things happen in the real estate industry. That way you can learn from their failures and their big wins so you can start winning more in your real estate business. So Tierny, welcome to the show. Welcome to Coffee with Closers. I appreciate you coming on. And I'm excited to hear about this topic because so many agents are trying to do it and a lot of them are struggling to get there. So Tierny, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, awesome. So Tierny, tell us a little bit about the journey, how you got started, and then ultimately how you got to become a millionaire real estate agent.
Yeah, so I worked in corporate America. I was at the same job for 8 years and struggling to get my degree. I started off making $27,000 a year, and I thought certainly after I got my degree, I would get to six figures. That was my goal. Well, after 8 years, I got up to 60,000, and that was my cue to say, you need to get out of here, do something else with your time. So I started investing in real estate on the side. My first year doing real estate part-time while I was still working, I ended up making $50,000. So to me, I'm like, okay, 8 years, I made $33,000 more at this job. 1 year part-time in real estate, I made $50,000. So that was my aha moment. I decided to get into real estate full-time, left corporate America, and I just wanted to make $100,000 a year. So I was gung-ho to put my full time and effort into six figures. I got there in 2 years.
Wow.
So it took me, first year wasn't that great. I was trying to figure things out, like how do I even get business, and then I got to a place where I'm like, okay, I think I can do this. I can definitely hit my initial goal, which was that six-figure mark. So I think for me, just putting myself full-time in the business was that first step, and I didn't have a plan B because I was coming into it like, this is gonna work. I see a lot of people kind of struggle with, they want to keep that check coming in because it's comfortable, right?
Yep.
So they struggle with leaving even though they know they can do this business. So I think like that was step one for me, was this is going to be my full-time gig. I'm going to put all of my time and effort into it. It's even though we work for ourselves, we're not punching a clock for somebody else. We still have to treat it like a business, right? We still have to put time and deposit value and bring value to the marketplace to actually make money. It's not just gonna happen, right? So I did it. I treated it like I was working for myself, and I put full time into it and got the results back.
That is awesome. So you basically, your first year, you did really well. I mean, $50,000 in your first year is a lot more than the majority of agents make, right?
Yeah.
So that's excellent. So what were some things that you did on that very, very first year to get to that $50,000?
So that was just real estate investments.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
That was real estate investments. I don't even remember how many transactions I actually did my first year full-time just doing the real estate sales. But I know it took me 2 years to get to six figures.
Oh, wow. Okay. But that's really fast.
Yeah.
That's a really quick turnaround. So when you first got on board with, doing traditional real estate sales, what was your game plan? How did you ramp up to that number so fast?
So my game plan was my sphere of influence, and I would door knock. So I was okay with smart targeting. So smart targeting for me was just looking in the tax roll to see how long people have been in their property. So I'd find a specific area, really the area that I lived in, I knew. So I was familiar, even though I was in real estate for a short period of time, I at least knew that market because I lived there, right? So I found in our MLS here, we can put in an address and we can see all the neighbors. So I just put in my address, found all the neighbors, and saw when people actually purchased their house. And I went after just introducing myself as their neighbor, letting them know like, hey, I'm in real estate, and then said, hey, you know, if the numbers made sense, have you thought about selling your house? So just working, that didn't cost anything for me to do that, except for some sweat equity, right? So
Yeah.
I would knock 100 doors a day.
That's awesome.
I know with 100 doors, I'll probably talk to 10 people and hopefully I can get at least one, you know, listing out of that, or at least one appointment out of that.
That is awesome. That's a big grind. I did the same thing when I started. It's hot, especially in the summertime. I know you're down in Texas, so
yeah,
that climate is hot, and it's a good workout, but it's a lot of work. You know, it's a lot of work.
Workout, and people honor that. Like they see you and they're like, man, she's out here working. I want to help her. And I think if I can remember correctly, because I got licensed in 2006, so it's been some time, right? I think the first appointment I got was from somebody who gave me somebody's number. So they saw me out there grinding and they were like, you know what? And I think the guy's name was Tony. Like, Tony's getting ready to sell his house. Here's his number. So
nice.
People will honor, and I tell people all the time, you're not going to get something for nothing, right? You have to put in the work, but if you continue to put in the work, deposit value into the marketplace, you know, not just seeming like a sleazy salesperson out there, but really understanding what's going on, knowing that most of the time real estate's going to appreciate with time. So being able to give that information to people and see, you know, if they want to take advantage of the market.
That makes sense. That is awesome. And that's like a good thing too when you first get started. I know a lot of agents, they buy leads and they spend a ton of money on marketing, but sometimes before they know it, they're out of business before they even get started because this stuff's expensive. You know, Zillow leads are a couple $100s a piece now. So going back to the basics, like you did, how you got started is a really good thing.
Yeah. And one thing that we're doing now that has helped us, because we do a lot of online stuff. So in terms of the cost for the leads, we found if you're in an area where there's new construction, a lot of the times the builders aren't really responsive to the consumer, right? They're not great marketers and they're not necessarily very responsive. So there's a gap there. So if you can educate yourself on the different communities and then create just a simple landing page with the amenities of the community, and then go look at the keywords for that community, they're going to be cheaper than like buy a home now or sell my home, right? Because it's a community. So you pay for the keywords, you drive traffic to that website, and you put your contact information on there, and then you educate people. There could be opportunity there, even for new people, and it won't be as expensive as competing for like bottom of the funnel buyer and seller leads.
That's smart. That is really smart. And I've never heard anybody mention that. So that's a good tactic. That makes sense. Because I'd imagine, like you said, the keywords there must be a lot less competitive.
They're really economical. And they're not real competitive either.
That's awesome. That's a really good strategy. Okay, so you're doing a lot more online leads now. So how did you get to the point, like how many years was it before you scaled from that 6 figures into a team and then eventually into becoming, you know, a millionaire real estate agent, like the book, Gary Keller, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, all that kind of stuff there?
So in 2008, I got my broker's license. And I did a deal with an agent, and it led to me getting an REO position. So I worked real hard on the short sale that took forever, and I didn't end up getting the deal done because my buyer just flaked at the last minute, which happens in our industry, right? Yeah. But I put so much work into it the listing agent reached out to me and he was like, hey, you worked really hard. I would love to work with you. I'm getting a position as a broker at this brokerage, and we have an REO account. And I would love for you to work this sector for REOs. So my business went from like, $100,000 a year to I kept 40 listings in my pipeline. Now with REOs, of course, some of them aren't active. You got to go check in, for occupancy and stuff. But 40 listings on average I kept. So that scaled me to a whole nother level, and it created more experience where I learned how to price properties really quickly. I learned how to assess them and do broker price opinions, and I did a lot of contracts within that time. So that experience, that brokerage decided they didn't want to continue after a couple of years, and I decided from then that I was going to generate my own leads. So I started doing, at the time it was a lot, the internet was starting to get popular, right? So I started doing Google advertisements, and my background is management information systems is what I have my degree in. And for that company that I worked for, I built websites towards the end of my career with them. So I had a little bit of knowledge about websites and stuff like that. So I started driving traffic, and I got to a point where I had more opportunity than I personally could capitalize on. So hence I decided to start a team, because I saw agents struggling with leads. Like they didn't have people to call, and I had that opportunity for people. So I started a team. So it took me, 2011 is when I really got heavy. I brought somebody in to take over the internet marketing, who's still with me today, runs my whole marketing team. So 2011 is when I ramped it up and really created a real business, I would call it.
That's awesome. Okay. So it sounds like you had excess leads. You had that part figured out. Now, I know the next biggest thing is with real estate teams, the next process that becomes tricky is recruiting, and then the systems.
Yeah.
The systems get tricky.
The recruiting was easy because when you have things that people are looking for, right, they're going to come. So
that's true.
I had leads. People wanted that. So the trickiest thing, I think, was the systems and processes, because originally I hired only seasoned agents, because in my mind I thought they already will know how to work these. I just give them the leads. That was so far from the truth. I really had to create the systems and processes, and that's something that, I did it in an old school way. I just documented everything I did, so as I was, talking to a buyer, I would document the scripts and how I overcame objections, and that became my process. And I created, I started with Boomtown. So I've been with Boomtown since 2011. That's my CRM. That's great if you run a team or a brokerage. It's the platform is good for teams. But I had my own marketing team driving traffic in. I just used the Boomtown platform. So, just developing those systems and then being able to monitor things in that CRM, because you can see how long does it take people to respond. So we have all those things in place, our expectations, and it was based on how I was having success. And I just documented everything that I did, and then I trained the agents that I brought in, and had an expectation, and I would inspect what I expected. So if they weren't doing the things that we had agreed that they would do, then they just wouldn't have access to the system, and they wanted to keep that access. So I think the hardest part was the system, but it's just taking time, which in sales, we run, we go with the flow. We don't always document, right? That's a hard piece. So if that's not your strong suit, you have to just hire somebody to do it for you. And now you can just take a video, just video yourself doing everything, and then send it to your VA and have them type up the documentation for you.
That makes total sense. Okay. All right. So now I know a lot of team leaders that are thinking about starting, 'cause I know I came into this when I first started. How many people, or like what kind of production numbers should team leaders get to actually get to that point where they have $1 million business?
When you get to the point where you can't service everything that's coming in, I don't know, everybody has a different capacity to handle a different amount of business, right? And if you do more listings, you can handle more than somebody who specializes with buyers. So that's a hard question to answer, but I would say if you're leaving opportunities and you can't get to everything, and you've created leverage on the transactional side, so you're not doing your paperwork, you have an admin who's handling, the busy work for you, so you've leveraged those things out and you still can't get to all the money-making activities, then you need to create leverage in the business.
That makes sense. Okay. So it sounds like you just kind of hire agents as needed, and then once you get them up and running and they're to full capacity, they can't handle any more deals, and you have that additional lead flow from your marketing, you go on and hire another one, and then you kind of build from there.
Right.
So you kind of hire out of necessity.
That's what I did anyway.
That makes sense. Okay, that makes total sense. Now, just to give people a rough idea, because I know everybody thinks that traditional teams are the most profitable thing, and they see team leaders racking up a ton of GCI, but from your experience, like what does the average team net out of their GCI? Because you have the top line number, then you have the number after all your expenses, like marketing, systems, broker splits, all that kind of stuff.
Right. So most team leaders and broker owners are not that profitable. They'll be lucky to net like 10%, right? I was very lean. I was very, very lean, and I worked too. So you have expenses, and then you have your cost of sale, right? So your cost of sale is your splits, and then the expenses is pretty much everything else. So when you work in the business still, your cost of sale is going to be lower, because when you average like whatever split you have with your agents, plus you don't pay anything to yourself, right? You don't have a cost of sale for yourself. You make more, right? So I've stayed very lean. My transaction coordinators were paid per transaction, and they didn't get paid if we didn't close. The only real expense that I had outside of like office fees, but for personnel, was the marketing team. So paying for marketing. And I would rather have a marketing person than like an admin.
Yes, I get it. And it's smart with the TC thing. I did the same thing, because you don't want that, re-evolving expense that comes in every month, like having someone on salary. I know that was kind of the old school method of thinking, is like hire an admin, put them on salary, and that comes in every month. So if the market takes a dip or whatever happens, you still have to pay that paycheck. So the TC that's, transaction based is really awesome.
Yeah, and you can negotiate. If you do a lot of transactions, you can negotiate that fee too.
Yeah, that's huge. That makes a ton of sense. And now once you get to a certain point, did you start kind of branching out and investing in property as an investor, as a flipper, or did you just focus on traditional sales and building the team up?
So remember, I started as an investor. So when I left corporate America, I was coming in to invest. After I started doing deals, I was finding the deals, but I was putting their names on my deals, and I'm like, you know what? I need to just get my license. So I've always been an investor / realtor, broker from the very beginning.
Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome. Because I know there's a ton of opportunity in the investment side, and I know a lot of agents don't even, dabble into it. They don't even look into it. They just stay focused on the sales side, which is fine, but there's still a lot of opportunity there that can be uncovered, you know?
Sure. Even if you decide to partner with somebody, like in the beginning, I didn't have the money, but I put in the sweat equity. So I had a partner who had the money. So there's always opportunity. You don't have to have necessarily a whole bunch of money to get started with it. You can leverage the property that you find for the financing as well, if it's going to be a flip, you know? So yeah.
That is awesome. And now, last question. Do you suggest that team leaders, realtors, brokers, that they do buy and hold real estate like long-term rentals, or have you gotten to that side of the business? I know you do flips, but do you do any like buy and hold stuff?
Yeah. So I actually just I've sold almost everything that I've had, but I had 2 houses that I sold in the last year that I owned for over 20 years. So those are long term. One I bought for $165,000. I bought it brand new, and I put a tenant in there, and the tenant was on Section 8, which if you know anything about Section 8, they pay you every month, and it was actually a grandmother who had custody of her grandkids, so she stayed in there up until a year ago, basically. And Section 8 paid every month, so it wasn't like a bad situation. I had another property that I bought for $55,000. I either bought it for 55 and put 75 into it, something like that, or bought it for 75 and put 55 into it. Then I put a tenant. I found an abandoned property, so I used to go after the abandoned properties. That was gold to me, because all the other investors didn't want to deal with them, because you have to go find the owner.
Yeah.
So I used to send out letters, and we put the little stamp, return service requested, and we knew it was empty, and you'd get the letter back showing their new address, because you put that return service requested on there. So you'd get the address of the person, their new address, and we'd just go to their house and say, hey, they've already abandoned it, but we found the houses that had equity in them, and for whatever reason the people just left them. So that one of the houses that I sold recently after owning for 20 years was an abandoned house. And the guy, we found him, he was at his mom's house. He moved in with his mom because his dad passed away, and his mom couldn't afford to pay her mortgage anymore. So instead of her losing her house, he went and moved in with her, helped pay for her house, and lost his house.
Oh, wow.
So we would buy the pre-foreclosures. So we'd get them right before they went into foreclosure.
Wow. Okay. That's a good strategy. That's really good. Now I'd imagine, you cashed out pretty well. I mean, the market's been on its way up for the last, 10, 12, 13 years. So
yeah,
it's,
this selling within the last year for us was the highest point. That was the most that we could get out of both of those properties. And we had a tenant in there this whole time, just paying the mortgage off. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I think it's a great strategy. It's something that can work for you in the background while you still do your traditional business. And I think it's a huge thing for agents to get involved with long-term investing with rental properties and all that stuff. It's a good way to build wealth.
100%.
So Tierny, thanks for coming on. I definitely appreciate it. And if you have any questions for Tierny, definitely drop them in the comment section below, and she'll do everything she can to respond. And thanks so much for tuning in. Have a great day.